Hi folks, I have a boat trailer here and I'm about to check the bearings, and I wanted to just give a little talk about it kind of as I'm doing it and checking it. Folks, boat bearings, boat trailers and the bearings that are on the axle, keep in mind that every boat trailer that I know of usually gets backed up into the water to release the boat. Keep in mind that the axle is also going in water, and water is more than likely, and it's highly likely, water is going to get inside where the bearings are. Now, it may not sound very alarming and sound like it means anything, and if they're new bearings, it really don't mean too much, other than the fact that in the fall, if the bearings ain't taken out and basically repacked with grease, it's going to sit there until the next spring, and then that little bit of moisture that's in there is going to rust the bearings, and it's going to basically make the bearings have a short life. So it's always smart to check the bearings out, especially if you're going to go on a long boating trip or a long trip to a lake, to check out the bearings. Now this fella, apparently his bearings haven't been checked, even looked at, in a few years. So I'm interested to see if there's any kind of bearing damage due to the water getting in. Now he may have a really good axle on this trailer, and there may be very, very little amounts of water getting in that. And I'm also going to show you how the water does enter through. So let me get this grease buddy off. This grease buddy here is going to come off first. See, these grease buddies are just set up that all you got to do is they kind of grease themselves, but what they don't do is remove the water. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll be back with you when I get this grease buddy off here and I'm able to see the big nut that holds this whole thing in place. Okay, I got the grease bearing, the buddy off, and already you can see there's water coming out. So that bearing there is going to be not in too good a shape. Now I can't tell because this is a really, really dirty part, and if anyone's going to get involved with it, make sure you have a few rags around on hand. So I'm going to just kind of, just a little bit here to see if I can see some fresh grease in there, and I can see some definitely water damaged grease. So the next stage is I'm going to pull this apart so I can actually slide off the hub and take a look at the bearings themselves. Okay, his wheel and hub is off, and it's really easy getting off. You're going to have, once you get the grease bearing buddy off, sometimes it's just a cap, normal cap that goes on without a grease nipple. This one here has a grease nipple, so it needs to be the way that cap is. So anyways, in order to get that nut off, in case someone doesn't know, they're going to run into this piece here looking thing. It's underneath that nut. It's underneath that. And you see how that goes like such in there? And then eventually, well, not eventually, you tighten this nut up to just tight, not real tight, not over tight, never over tighten it. And then that little tab will actually bend up in one of them little notches on the nut, and that stops the nut from undoing itself. Now for this piece here, it may look kind of strange, like, well, how is the threads going to cross over that piece, blah blah blah. Well, I'll show you. On the shaft itself you have a flat spot, and that's where that little piece goes up inside. So let me see here, I'll show it to you. You see, like so. And then that piece there rests up against that flat edge and allows them threads to go by it. And then once that's back in place, then those little tabs, one of these little tabs is going to be bent up into one of these notches, and that's going to stop that from loosening up all by itself and allowing the wheel to fall off. Okay, so now I cleaned up the bearing, and the bearing is in terrible shape. It's just terrible. I'm afraid that one good ride down somewhere and this is just going to fall apart. It's going to deteriorate and basically crumble apart. Now the race itself inside, which is still part of the hub, that's in terrible shape. So the combination of the race and the bearing, when they're spinning, it's not going to hold up very long. I couldn't tell you how many miles the fellow would make it, but he would be stranded on the side of the road. So I'm going to take care of that for him so he can get back with his fishing and enjoying his days. But I need to let him know that he needs bearings, because I don't have any bearings to replace them with. So now the whole process is on hold. But now back to the shaft and why the water creeps its way in when the boat's being launched into the water. You can see on the back of the hub there's a seal here, and that seal has these little, basically little pieces of rubber that stick downward, and they go tight up against the shaft. Well, what happens is, from being brand new, they're a perfect fit. The circumference of the seal and the diameter of the shaft are meant to be together. The seal itself hugs the shaft just nice, just at the right pressure to stop any such dust and water and whatever else that might be trying to come up in the backside as a person's going down the road or backing up into the water. But this trailer here is a pretty old trailer, and what ends up happening from traveling on the roads and the back roads and bush roads and stuff like that is that you're picking up dust, and dust kind of comes in the backside here, and it starts mixing up in the seal and the little bit of grease that's there, and it basically goes around and around and around, and you end up, what happens is a little indentation here will develop within the shaft itself. So the seal now is not riding nice and tight. So now the water is just that much more easy, can come right inside without any stopping it. The water has no problems at all once that little wore out spot takes place. The water is able to enter in very easy. So instead of changing an axle, the only thing this person can do is regularly clean up the bearings in the races and pack new grease in there. You know, more than once a season, more like every trip he goes on to. It doesn't take a whole lot involvement of removing what needs to be removed and slide that off and check out the circumstance and dry up any moisture. Allow the sunshine to evaporate what's in the hub as far as moisture, and then put it back together, and till the next trip do the same thing. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but the only other way around it is basically replacing the axle itself. And there would be another way around it if a person wanted to. They could bring it to a machine shop and they could actually spin it in the lathe, but that's probably not going to be cheap. A new axle might be cheaper than actually bringing it to a machine shop and having them do it. So there's not a whole lot of ways around this. A lot of people don't know what ends up happening with this, and they usually end up getting frustrated because they'll always say, well, I just put new bearings in there last year. And if a person does any heavy kind of fishing and they're backing up into water lots of times, well, that just means there's that much more water getting in there. And really what that means is that the bearing is going to live that much, live a lot less shorter than that life. It's going to have a short life compared to a person only using, say, the boat once a summer or once a season. You have some people out there that are going out every day. So an axle like this one, entering the water every day, doesn't take long before the bearing inside this hub is going to basically not last anyhow. Give a person grief, make them be stuck, stranded. Not very many people carry extra hubs and bearings with them. So whoever's watching this video, I sure hope they got some tips from it. Even carrying an extra hub, if you have an axle like that, carrying an extra hub with bearings in the vehicle is always a pretty smart thought to have. Well, thank you for watching, folks. Subscribe if you have not, and thank you very much for those that have.